Thousands demonstrate in central London today against what they see as Theresa May's attempts at destroying the National Health Service. The charge that the Tories have used the financial services crisis to bail out the bankers of the City of London in an attempt to bury Britain's universal healthcare system. One of the speakers joining UK Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn on the march today is NHS nurse Jacqui Berry. She joins me now. Jacqui, thanks so much for coming on. Why are you marching today?
Well, we decided to hold this demonstration around three very clear demands. Number one, we don't want any more cuts, closures and privatisation in the health service. Number two, we want an end to pay restraint for NHS staff. We have endured a pay freeze which has lasted longer than the Second World War. We are 14% worse off in real terms than we were in 2010, and that's having a knock-on effect on the service. And number three is a more general demand about what's happening in the NHS more widely, and that's that we need a fully funded, publicly owned, publicly provided national health and social care service.
The government continually say, week after week, they spend more money than any other government, that they've spent much more than the previous governments.
I mean, the cost of healthcare is continually increasing, and the impact of cuts in social services also has a massive impact on the acute sector. We're also undergoing £22 billion worth of efficiency savings. So for the government to say we're investing in the NHS at a time where even the Red Cross have acknowledged it's in a humanitarian crisis is a little disingenuous at best, I think.
Theresa May said the Red Cross was basically completely out of order for criticising the NHS.
I think the Red Cross has got a far better understanding of what a humanitarian crisis is than Theresa May.
So just take us through what this sustainability and transformation plan of the government is. It sounds great. They're trying to sustain the NHS and transform it.
The STPs, I think they're deliberately opaque in their branding and their marketing. They are essentially dividing the NHS into 44 footprints across NHS England. It's a top-down reorganisation that wasn't in anybody's manifesto. And the purpose of these 44 footprints is at a local level to bring together providers from acute trusts, community trusts, private companies and local councils. And the role of these organisations, although it's being branded as about bringing services together so that we can offer more joined-up care, essentially they are mechanisms for implementing £22 billion worth of cuts. They will also have the power to sell off assets, and by assets I mean land, I mean equipment, and I mean services. So they are tools for privatisation of the NHS.
I mean, the government is very aware that the new Labour privatisations were disasters, whether it be PFI or bringing private contractors in. Why do you think that they want to have more involvement with the private sector?
Well, I think...
which is less than under New Labour.
I think that New Labour went far further than Margaret Thatcher ever dared to go in terms of breaking up the health service and priming it for privatisation. You know, we are not one NHS anymore. We are several hundred competing trusts, which means that services which are very expensive to provide and don't generate huge amounts of revenue get cut, like emergency care, leaving other areas to pick up the strain. In terms of why this government are keen to continue a disastrous strategy towards privatisation, to be honest with you, I think it is partly ideological. The idea that everybody pays in what they can and takes out what they need is fundamentally at odds with the agenda of the Tory party. But I think there's also economic issues as well. There is big business is looking for new avenues to explore in order to realise profit in the wake of the banking crisis. And the NHS, which has previously been an area that hasn't been open to marketisation to the same extent as in other countries, is starting to look a bit like an all-you-can-eat buffet for corporate investors.
Do you know people who are thinking of leaving? We hear statistics about up to 60% of doctors thinking of leaving.
I know people who have left. I know people who have left to go and practice nursing in other countries. I know people who have left to go and work on the books of private agencies where the pay is better and the workload is certainly more forgiving.
The pay is better because the cost of the NHS is more?
Yes. So private agencies will provide staff, so money goes out to the private agencies and the private agencies pay better than NHS services do. And I know people who have left nursing altogether to go and do other things where they're going to have an easier life and a better salary.
Jeremy Corbyn is addressing today's march, but of course it was the Red Tories, so-called the anti-Corbyn people on Labour benches, that were famous for bringing privatisation into the NHS. Can Corbyn be trusted not to be a new Labour lackey?
Well, I think I think that Jeremy Corbyn needs to send a very strong message to the public that the Labour Party today does not support the continuation of the pro-privatisation policies of the new Labour government. I think that they need to come out and say that actually they would tear up the PFI contracts, which are crippling trusts up and down the country. I think.
Surprised there's been no word on tearing up those PFI contracts between public and private ownership of even land of hospitals?
I would like to see him make some pledges about that, and also about reversing the marketisation that has already taken place in the health service. I think that Jeremy Corbyn coming and speaking at this demonstration today shows that actually he does support our demands, but I think the Labour Party need to take that message to the public, and I think they need to take it to the Tories. The other thing that I think that they should do, because is about these STPs. The local councils are about the only democratically accountable people that have got any say in the STP implementation process. We today have got a speaker coming from Hammersmith and Fulham Council who has rejected the implementation of the STP in their borough. That is a Labour council. And really what I would like to see Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, the leadership of the Labour Party, do is put the call out to every Labour council, ask them to reject the STPs as well. If there is a revolt in local government, because bear in mind, it will be local councillors who will be held responsible for future crises in the National Health Service. They need to put the call out to their local councils and give them the confidence to reject the STPs as well.
That'll be something extra to, obviously we've had junior doctors strike action and all the other measures against the government. As I say, the government says there's less privatisation than initiatives than Labour has ever put into practice. There's also a loss of staff, not just because people are leaving because of the conditions. What is the morale like? I mean, we just saw in the papers recently that identity managers are going to change the logos of the NHS in every hospital in Britain. They get £69,000 a year. Nurses, band 5 nurses, they start on 21,000, it rises to 28,000. What do nurses feel like when they see how the NHS is? Some people are getting a lot of money out of it.
I mean, to be honest with you, you do have to ask yourself the question, what is the purpose of an identity manager for the National Health Service, which exists to provide care and treatment to the sick and the vulnerable? The only reason that you would need some sort of branding expert for local NHS trusts is if it is moving towards further privatisation. In terms of morale, it's not good. People are demoralised. People don't see that the government is putting the investment in, the resources in to enable us to do the jobs that we all want to do. You know, we don't become nurses and doctors for the money. We become nurses and doctors because we want to help people. But, you know, when you're in a system which is set up to fail, that has an effect on staff morale. The only time that I would say that morale has picked up over the last 12 months was at the height of the junior doctors dispute. When the junior doctors took the industrial action that they did, that gave confidence to other workers that actually, you know, this is in our hands. And if we NHS workers are served up further pay restraint in the next couple of weeks from our pay negotiations, then we're going to have to look very seriously about taking similar action.
Jacqui Berry, thank you.
Thank you.